Hi, my name's Keith Cooper of Northlight Images, and this is a video aimed at people who are thinking of the Canon Pro 1100 here as their first printer. Well, actually I should say the first proper printer, because I don't think if you were just thinking of taking up photo printing you'd necessarily go for something advanced as this. I don't know, some people might do. I would, if you're completely new to printing, well, I've looked at that in other videos, suggestions for that, but this is quite an advanced printer, and getting this as your first photo printer or art printer is a little like sort of getting yourself a high-performance sports car and deciding you want to learn to drive. It's possible, it's been done, but it could come at an expense. Anyway, how is this as a printer? It's an excellent printer. It's a really good printer. 12 pigment inks. The inks are similar, slightly improved on the older Pro 1000, which was a great printer. This is essentially the same physical printer, few differences in inks and things. Nothing that's going to make a huge difference. Certainly if you're new to printing, you're not going to notice any difference between the 1000 and the 1100. And there's an important thing. If you're new to printing, there's quite a lot of things you're going to have to learn to look at and study. Now, I said it's very good, yes. Are there any sort of caveats to that? Yes, there are. Now, I will come back to sort of software suggestions and things like that and other stuff. But first of all, the cost of the printer. They're not cheap. Check for local prices. I can't, it's brand new and I can't follow prices all around different regions of the world, but it ain't cheap. Size, well, you can see it here. This thing actually weighs 35 kilos or thereabouts. It is here because I could not carry it up to my office to test it. It's got to go back to Canon anyway. And, you know, it's big. You will need someone to help you move it around. Simple things like this that people forget sometimes. The space you need. If you want to print via the rear slot here, and you tend to use that for higher quality media, you can use the top slot for some, but typically higher quality media are fed in at the back. You need extra space at the back here. Now it's got wireless, this is connected on wired Ethernet just because I happen to have the network here, but it works fine on wireless, so there's no real problems there. I said, yeah, it needs space. It's also, I'm going to say, relatively noisy to smaller printers you may have experience of. It's not got huge great fans that whir up and make lots of noise, but if you're putting it in somebody else's office and they're not using it, they may well get irritated just by the amount of noise. Why is it noisy? Well, it's one of the features of it is that it has a vacuum paper feed. Now the vacuum draws air in and holds the paper flat as it goes through the printer and the ink is applied to it. That is used on much bigger printers. It works very well, but of course it makes some noise because it's drawing the air in. This printer still does have probably the best current sheet paper feeding. I've not tested it yet on long panoramics, but if you're looking at this and you want to get into panoramics, this does offer it, but you might want to consider what else. If you're buying something at this level, there are other printers you might want to consider for it. All depends on what you want to print. But anyway, just looking at this one here, I said size, cost, inks. Now the inks, I've just recently changed the inks on this because of setup issues and various things that I've been doing. I do check ink usage, but I can't check it precisely to give costs because the testing I do for the period I have the printer is just too varied to get good quality data for me to be able to say, oh yes, it will cost you such and such a print. I'll put a link in the notes that goes to a very good pricing page that gives you information at Red River Paper where they've done measurements and calculations, and you can get a broad idea of the cost per print on that of using ink. Now, that doesn't cover ink uses in maintenance. This printer, and I am in the process of confirming this, does need to be left switched on. If you switch it off for a week or so and switch it back on, a whole load of ink gets used up in cleanings. Now, you don't really want to do that, but be prepared to, it uses ink just keeping it going. Cars use oil, printers use ink to keep the engine running, and that's what that happens. So the other thing to note is when you first set this up, your ink levels will drop by 40–50%. You think, where's all that ink gone? Has it gone through into the maintenance cartridge at the back? Not quite, because of the way this printer works. It has ink carts, which are underneath here, 12 of them. The ink is taken, or some of the ink is taken from those into what are called sub-tanks. So the ink system, it balances the pressures and all sorts of things like that. So that missing ink that you get when you start up the printer for the first time, most of it has not actually gone into the waste tank at the back. There is a fluid in the lines and the print head needs charging. So most of the ink has gone from the carts into the printer, not necessarily out the back end. These carts they're replaceable. You shouldn't need to replace them very often. Well, not unless you switch the printer off every night and start it up the next morning. Switching it off seems to cause more ink to be used. But I'll come back to that when I do the proper review for this, because it's something I want to check up more on before I just go, oh yes, it'll do this or do that. So that's something to consider. Now, paper. And paper at any decent size is not cheap. This will take A2. Now this is A3 plus, or 13" by 19". That's that's a big size. But once you start printing A2, the full size this, or even if you go for roll paper and for printing panoramics, because you can cut sheets and feed cut sheets through to do sort of wide shots, like wide prints like that. Once you start doing that, paper can get quite expensive. So how do you start on the printer like this? Where to look at? One other thing I should say is that a picture, an image or a photo that prints great at A4 or letter size, the actual image itself may need a lot more work on it to print it at A2 or something. The images that work best at large print sizes are not necessarily the images which work best when you print them small. So if you've only printed small, or if large for you was printing A4, and that's A4, there's a Canon pack of paper there. So if that's a large print for you, then be prepared to change your definitions of what large prints are. It really does make a difference. And a lot of the skill in producing big, interesting images comes from understanding how images look at different sizes. Now, I've done videos about this. I do have a detailed, if you're new to the videos, I do have a very detailed list, indexed list on the Northlight Images website, which I created, which actually has a categorized list of all my videos, because there are well over 600 of them, and YouTube is pretty useless at indexing things. So if you want to find out more, go to that page there and you'll find out. I'll put that in the notes as well. So anyway, where to start? Well, papers. Use, and people ask about why I bother using these papers. The Canon Premium Matte, Canon Pro Platinum. If you can't make a good print on one of these papers, then what hope have you got if you're new to printing and you've bought yourself a box of, let's just say, A3 plus or even A3? You've bought a box of expensive paper, you print something out. How do you know you're doing things right? You don't. If you're new to this stuff, you need to do a lot of practice first. Now, I do this when I'm testing things. I always take a while doing profiling, doing all sorts of stuff before I start producing lots of photos. I want to get the hang of using it. So pick your start papers, something like Pro Platinum, which is very glossy. I would suggest perhaps the Luster paper is a better choice for a first one. If you want to experiment what matte prints look like, don't go for the expensive art papers. Something like the Premium Matte here. This is relatively cheap compared to some of the other papers and is worth it for experimenting. Now, what to print? Now, this will come as no surprise to people who know many of my videos. I've been doing my looking at printers, which I've been doing for years. The first images I always print, and these are done on the matte paper here. This colour test image. Now, I've got loads of stuff about this test image, why you should use it, what it's good for, all the things that it tells you. That's for colour and that's for black and white. Now, it's a specialist black and white. These are freely downloadable on the Northlight Images website. If you cannot make a great looking print of a test image like that, then what hope have you got for printing one of your own images? If it comes out wrong, you've no idea whether it's your photography, your editing, your printer settings, how you've set the printer up here. You've got no idea. So always test with a test image to start with. If that comes out great, fine, your printer's working okay. If that comes out great and your first photo that you print out comes out looking wrong, well, that's your fault. If I print and a picture comes out and looks wrong, after this comes out okay, I know I've done something wrong. It's easy to do. There are all sorts of ways about loading papers, setting media types, all sorts of stuff, details and things like that, that you do need to get right. Now, software, how to print. I said to first print, I would always suggest if you are relatively new to this printer, or even if you're new to printing, to download a copy of Canon's PPL software. It's free, Professional Print Layout or something like that. I can't remember what it stands for, but anyway, it's very good. It's the software that I used for showing the examples of printing this black and white print here, and this is on an art paper, or this borderless colour glossy print. Now, I used PPL for both of these. Not because it's inherently the best way of doing printing, but it is reliable. You will have access to the Canon printer profiles because you need to be able to use printer profiles to get the best quality results. For black and white, there's a black and white print mode, and you need to know whether you want to make any adjustments to allow for slight tints or tones that you might get with some papers. But start off with Canon software, Canon paper. You're keeping it simple, and the whole idea is to try and keep it as simple as possible so that you spot mistakes and get past them. I've said that this is, perhaps not a printer I'd suggest as a first proper printer, but people do get it. I know this because I would say I do bespoke training here in the UK, one-to-one training about printing, and it's always done on site. I don't do it here. Our kitchen's not big enough, nor would I be allowed to do it here. I do one-to-one bespoke training. The commonest printer that I've been out in the last 5 years to do bespoke training and teaching for people has been this one. And this is why I know that some people will get this as their first proper printer. It's also why I have a fairly well-established process of using test images, looking at these to know what's wrong, what's right, before you move to other papers. Talking about moving to other papers, there are many very good third-party papers. Remember too that neither Canon nor Epson, for that matter, actually make their own paper. They have it made. Those same paper making companies make paper for other people. So papers or third-party papers, you think, well, Lord, will they work with a Canon printer? Yeah, they will. The problem is you will ideally need printer profiles for them. So if you're buying paper, first thing, avoid test packs of paper. Do not buy your printer and at the same time think, oh, I'll have a test pack of papers as well. I would recommend going to, if you want to buy your printer and there's a company that does papers that you've heard are good or you like the look of, if they sell the printers, buy a printer off them as well. Support smaller dealers who often will, as well as supply paper, they'll supply custom profiles, profiles anyway, but they'll even make custom profiles if you buy paper off them. Say, support the people who give you the good service. In the UK, I know Photospeed, Permajet, there are others as well, but they're the ones that I just happen to have papers that I'll be testing here and have used in the past. I don't have any relationship with them other than they've asked me to look at some papers and things like that, which obviously I appreciate, but have a look, see what people are offering, and be aware that, for a printer like this, if you're new to it, having somebody with expertise is helpful. I said that's why I do the one-to-one training. I've had people want to do black and white portraiture, for example, and I'm not a portrait photographer, I'm an architectural industrial photographer, but I can make a good print. As long as they've got a good photo to start with, I can show them how to get a great looking print from it. But of course, I mentioned the training there. This is the free version. I have two prices for what we do. There's full price, reassuringly expensive, or free. This is the free side. Well, I say free, obviously you get ads and whatever and things like that, but I'm afraid you just have to put up with that a bit. Anyway, no sample packs. Not until you can produce pictures here. The other thing on sample packs, be very wary of forum wisdom that says, oh, such and such is a superb paper for this. Paper is an immensely personal choice. Trust your own choices. It may change, but if you start with something like the basic Canon paper and you can get good looking results from these, once you can get good looking results from this paper, you can then use it to compare with other papers that you might test. So you might get a sample pack of Hahnemühle papers, for example, Canson, any of the better, or Permajet, as I said, or Photospeed. You might get a test pack of papers like that. But until you've actually had the practice to know what you're doing, how are you going to know if they're any good? Trust your own skills. And the thing that will develop those skills more than anything else is learning to actually look at prints. Now, I haven't got my strong print viewing glasses on, but I can look at this in terms of overall colour. I can look at the glossiness of it, and it comes out very nice. We've got some nice blues in the sky here. We've got some nice bright colours from the deck chairs. It's a nice picture. It's a holiday snap. Holiday snap taken a few years ago at Beer on the south coast in the UK. Wells Cathedral, Sea of Steps, based on the same view and photograph taken by F.H. Evans, I believe in 1908, famous architectural photograph that I was experimenting with a different lens on it. But anyway, they're just nice pictures that I like. Ones also that I know well enough that I'm happy to use them for test purposes. If I'm printing new pictures or I'm new to a printer, I'm always printing pictures, test images, ones I know. Anything else particular? Apart from the obvious, please take time to learn to look at the prints. You may come across things with people talking about soft proofing and things like that. To my mind, I'd never introduce soft proofing to people when I'm teaching about photography and printing until they've had printing practice. For soft proofing to be of use, you need to have printing experience. It gets listed as you just need to enable your soft proofing on Lightroom or whatever you use. There's a soft proofing option in the Canon PPL software, which is of occasional use. But do not rely on it. Learn to trust your vision, your judgment. You need ideally fairly good lighting as well. All things like that, you will want to check your monitor. One bit, if you're thinking of printing to a printer like this from a phone or a tablet and are interested in high print quality, look elsewhere. Phones, tablets need not apply. If you create images on a tablet, I'm afraid you're going to have to transfer them to a real computer to actually print at any quality. Yes, you can make prints, but you can't use all the functionality profiles and things like that. Yeah, just doesn't work very well. That, I suggest, is probably about it, really. No, there's nothing. Editing software, edit your files, export them, maximum quality JPEGs or TIFFs, and then you can put them into PPL. PPL obviously can be used as a plugin for Photoshop, but I'm assuming that many people aren't using Photoshop for something like that. You could use it with Lightroom as well. I would still, to start with, export your images and then learn to print them. And that's the process I would take. Of course, there are lots of different ways you can go about this. There are loads of different routes to get to a great print coming out of the printer. So if you want one of these as your first printer, well, good luck. It's a nice printer. Just don't think you're going to do it on a shoestring budget. Ink costs, paper costs. That's part of the price of being able to print big. So any questions, please do let me know. I'm still doing all of the testing. I will have a detailed review of this printer and lots more examples of printing different types of prints and different things about setting it up and other stuff like that. So thanks for watching, and bye. Oh, so please do subscribe to the channel. That's much appreciated. And if you know anyone who wants printer training and things like that, in the UK only, I'm afraid, I don't do it online. If you know anyone who wants bespoke printer training with much bigger printers than this if need be, give me a call. The business is always appreciated and I really enjoy doing it as well. So thank you.